Yeah, what is a meat wholesaler doing talking at ABARES about NRM? It's a bit of a long stretch, but there's a few things that we've been doing as a company and a journey that we've gone on. A bit of a story, I guess, that I want to share with you today. And as Warwick said, I'm no expert. I run a small company, a small business, and I'm just trying to figure out stuff as I go along, so don't hold me to account too much. So our story begins with this guy. This is my father. He's a farmer, as you can see, and he one day decided that he wanted to buy an abattoir on a remote island in the middle of nowhere. I've never asked him why. I don't really want to know the answer, but I think he thought that it was going to be a get-rich-quick scheme. I think a lot of farmers tend to share that hopeful optimism, but it wasn't. It was more of a get-poor-quick scheme. And he asked me to come on board when I was about 21 years old and try and help save the company. And he basically had to get me in a headlock to do it because I was going to go travelling overseas. Now, unfortunately for him, I didn't know anything about anything, but I thought I knew everything because I was 21 and I'm probably still the same. And so the first thing I did was I probably sent the company towards bankruptcy even faster than what we were already going. But through luck and hard work and trying lots of different things to see what would work, we finally turned things around. And over 7 years, we have completely changed as a business from what started out as a boutique meat processor, a small abattoir on a remote island doing lamb and wallaby. And this island I'm talking of is Flinders Island, which is in Bass Strait, to today, where we've actually morphed into a full-line meat wholesaling company, and we focus on the top-end restaurants. So for me, growing up on a farm with the old man and now serving some of the top-end chefs in the country, it's a bit of an eye-opener to some of the bubbles that exist in the world. You know, chefs are in a bubble in a restaurant, and a restaurant is in a bubble in the hospitality industry, and the hospitality industry is in a bubble in a city. So they're very removed from what happens on the farm, and it's been very interesting trying to break some of those bubbles. But it's something that we're very passionate about and something that we try to do a lot of. I'll talk a little bit more about where we're hoping to get to tomorrow towards the end of the talk. But essentially, we started out life, our company was called Flinders Island Meat. We were a boutique meat processor on Flinders Island, and we couldn't find a good distributor for our products in Melbourne, which I knew was going to be an important market for us. And so one day, out of desperation, I started knocking on restaurant doors. And I had a little Coles cooler bag full of meat, and I would go around to restaurants all day and say, can I speak to the chef, and would you like to try our lamb? And slowly but surely that strategy started to work. Chefs really liked dealing directly with the producer, and we started to get a premium price for our products, so it helped our company a lot. But one day, probably after a year of doing this, I had the bright idea of going, well, if we're already delivering our lamb to these restaurants, why don't we deliver some chicken or some beef or some duck or something else? And that was what started probably a 4-year process that led to us pivoting. I know this is a really popular word in the entrepreneur world. We pivoted, in hindsight, into becoming more of a distributor. And today, we actually don't own the abattoir on Flinders Island anymore. We sold the abattoir, and we focus on being a meat wholesaler and distributor in Victoria. But what happened was we were still called Flinders Island Meat. And as time went on, less and less of what we sold was from Flinders Island. So there was a misalignment with our brand, and that caused us to really rethink who we were as a company and where we were going and why we were going there. So this was the first try at our new brand. And I actually still really like this logo, but It took about 6 months of work, because I'm a very slow thinker, and one day I was sitting down with our graphic designer who I'd worked with to design this logo, and I just looked at it. For whatever reason, something came over me and I said, Damien, I'm really sorry, but this logo is not working. And he sort of said, what do you mean? I said, it's just not us. I don't know, we've missed something. We need to start again. And he was momentarily upset, but I mean, he gets paid by the hour, so he could see there was going to be a bit more work for him. So he wasn't too sad. But what I sort of realised was that a logo is a pretty face of a brand, but it's a representation of the heart and soul that sits behind that brand. And if you try to design the pretty face before thinking about the heart and soul that sits behind it, you'll run into trouble. You'll get more misalignment, not less. So I did a lot of thinking, a lot of reading, or as much as you can afford to when you're running a full-time business, and really tried to reflect on where we wanted to go as a business in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and why. What's the goal? Apart from money, why do we get up and go to work every morning? They're pretty hard questions to ask for anyone. And one of the questions that I asked myself, which really framed it for me, was when I look back on my career, what do I want to be able to say that I achieved? And it's a typical legacy question, but it's very, very valid because it forces you to put yourself in the shoes of your future self and to look back. And what I realised was that what tends to be a common meat wholesaler reason for or purpose for their company and their legacy, which is to sell lots of meat and you know, make lots of money, and it's all about volume and growth and beating your chest. Very sort of masculine dominant industry. I thought that isn't really that interesting for me. I think we can do better, and I think we need to do better. So I started researching purpose-driven organisations, and the more I read about them, the more I liked them, and the more I thought that that was something that we really needed to look at from our rebranding perspective and from our general company perspective. What are we all aligning behind as a company, from suppliers to staff to customers? What are we trying to achieve day to day? And one of the things that some of you might have seen is a tool that's been popularised by a guy called Simon Sinek, and it's called the Golden Circle, and it's a really good basic representation of what purpose can mean in an organisation. And it's a bit hard to read it, but I'll quickly go through. The Golden Circle basically works like this. You have the outer circle, which is the what, and the what is what you do as a business. Pretty much every company has a good understanding of what they do. It's the good or service that you sell. Fewer companies know how they do it, and the how is all about your value proposition, your unique selling point. It's something special that sets you apart. And then very few companies have really nailed their why, and the why is why your company exists or why your business exists. And it's not about making money, it's about something more than that. It's about purpose and meaning. And that, to me, really simply framed what purpose can mean in a business and how to think of it. The other side of it was thinking about consumers. And I know we've heard a little bit about consumers today, but I had it drilled into me on an MLA course that you need to listen to the consumer at a microscopic, granular level to really understand what's going on. And if you think you're listening to them, you're probably not. You actually literally need to go out there and speak to them. I have stalked people in supermarkets. I'm not kidding. I've watched them go to the meat aisle and pick up a particular packet, put it back down, pick up a different one, and I've gone up to them and asked them, why did you switch that over? And they're a bit shocked at first, but then they'll tell you and they'll explain. And usually in their answer, there's a really interesting insight that you can get out of that. But there is a lot of data out there to help guide you in this exploration of the consumer. And what I realised as I went through more of the data was that I thought we should target the millennial generation. I'm part of that generation. It's the future, when we're looking 10, 20, 30 years ahead, they're the biggest future consumer group. And I think that now the data is saying that they make up 50% of the workforce as of today. So they're a big group as it is. Some of the things that I found along this journey was that millennials, and it's a bit hard to read, but for example, in the bottom of this one, 85% of millennials want opportunities to help their employers reach their community responsibility goals. 2 in 3 millennials won't work for a company that doesn't have strong social and environmental commitments. To more food-related ones, 66% of consumers say they're willing to pay more for sustainable produce, and that actually goes up to 75% when you're talking about millennials. And 4 in 5 Australians say it's important that the food they eat when dining out is ethical and sustainable. So I thought, this is our positioning, this is our market that I want to go after. We need to relate that back to purpose, but your purpose also has to be strategic. So this is our strategy of the market we want to focus on. So to find your purpose is really hard as a company. It took a long time. It took another 6 months at least for us to get anywhere near something that we felt was a good vision for what we wanted to achieve as a company. But basically the process we followed was we started with our DNA, and our DNA is the things that had happened to us to give us our identity, our story. You know, Flinders Island, the abattoir, Dad's crazy business idea, the struggle, that all contributed to becoming our DNA. And from that, we were able to distill our purpose as a company. And from that purpose, we came up with our vision statement, which is to cultivate a better food world. And there were 3 main reasons that we came up with that vision statement. And I'll forget 2 of them, I'm sure, but anyway. The first is that there's a truth to it from our DNA. We never expressed it in so many words, but we sort of realised as we went through this process that it was kind of something we'd always been trying to do anyway. We'd always been trying to think outside the box, do things a bit differently, try to do things better. I think it's important that we have meaning in our everyday work lives. So for our staff and for myself personally, I wanted to have something interesting to work on every day rather than just get another customer or sell more meat or move more product. And thirdly, it was strategic. We really wanted to target that millennial consumer. So this was our new brand that we came up with, Flinders & Co, Cultivate Better. One of the things I realised was that I've got no bloody idea how to cultivate a better food world. But for the millennial consumer especially, it's important to be authentic, and it is important to be upfront and honest. And we realised that we really needed to be honest about this. We, as a result of that honesty, tried to come up with a bit of a map to show to people how we thought we would cultivate a better food world. And we came up with a structure, and again, speaking to millennials, they're very sceptical, they can be cynical, and they're very savvy. So if you don't back up your fluffy words with actual action, they will call you out on it and you'll get in trouble. So this is our framework. We have 4 pillars. Underneath each pillar is 3 focus areas. And the focus areas, 12 in total, are the areas that we think we need to focus on as a company to try to help and achieve our vision. We do that with specific projects. So there are a number of different projects on our website that we're working on. We're trying to add some and remove some all the time, complete as many as we can, that we think will help us achieve our overall vision. So the project, and I think the reason I'm here today, the first project that we completed was we became the world's first, as far as I know, I will clarify that, as far as I know, we're the world's first 100% carbon neutral meat supplier. What does that mean? we had, as part of our purpose-driven process as a company, we had workshops with our staff to understand what do we think are good ideas for projects that we should embark on as a company, and one of them was carbon neutral. So it came from the grassroots of our company. We engaged carbon consultants to come to our company and measure essentially our carbon footprint. There were a number of recommendations as to how we could reduce that. You reduce it as much as you can, and if you can't reduce it anymore, you offset it. And you offset it by purchasing credits in projects that are effectively taking carbon out of the atmosphere or negating the production of it in the first place. But the really cool thing we did was we did that to our entire supply chain. So we looked at all of our suppliers, whether they be beef, lamb, chicken, duck, whatever it was. The carbon consultants, they did a heap of work around this. And we decided that we wanted to get to a point where we could actually sell meat, steak, that is carbon neutral certified. There was a lot of work in that. They referenced a lot of academic studies that already exist in literature. If anyone's really interested in the process we went through, jump on our website. Under the Carbon Neutral Project page, I've basically dumped all of the reports that we had done up on the website for anyone to look at. But that got us to carbon neutrality. Now, we launched this in December to the market, and that was the worst time we could have launched it because it was Christmas and no one really cared. Everyone was busy shopping. So we're now playing a bit of catch up, but the process that I see this project following now is we're taking it out to market, we're trying to generate awareness around it. We're hoping that it generates alignment between our suppliers, our staff and our customers to show that we're serious about achieving our company vision. We hope that in turn develops loyalty to our brand and to our company from all three of those areas. And ideally, we get some value out of it. We get some profit. It pays us a dividend. I'm just going to quickly skip through this section because we're just at the end. How does this relate to NRM? I think that it's worth everyone in our industry really thinking about why we focus on NRM. It's sometimes not so obvious to everyone else in the industry and to consumers. So if you're able to think about your purpose and why NRM is important, and then capture that, it's a lot easier to get alignment between suppliers, between staff, and between your customers. And I think with alignment, it's a lot easier to capture extra value. So that's me. Thank you.